Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Titan Law. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with Willard Zireva, former Chief Executive Officer of OK Zimbabwe for 16 years. Enjoy this informative conversation. Willard Zireva, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you, Trevor. It's my pleasure.
We're going to start at exactly where you are with your life right now. You are retired. And this book that I've read a number of times says that people who are where you are, above 60, having been successful, at this stage of your life, you're beginning to, this is a new beginning for you. How is retirement for you, Willard?
Trevor, retirement for me has been good. I have been out of full-time employment now for 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. But I found myself busy throughout the period. When I left, my initial intention was to set up a management consultants company, which I felt there was scope and room for me to do exactly that, to assist, in the process, assist other businesses and entrepreneurs. However, after taking a 1-year break from being involved in anything which was demanding, I then started looking at setting up the consulting company and bought a building for my office, which is still there, some furniture. And then along the way came my oldest son. Mm-hmm. And he says to me, "Dad, we need to do more at the farm." So this is a farm which I bought in 1993, a long time ago. And we've been operating, it's a farm which does, it's a mixed farm. Mm-hmm. We have a cropping, livestock, and my emphasis is on the cropping. Mm-hmm. My son enjoys more the livestock. Mm-hmm. So he runs a piggery, which I think has been very successful. And so he says, no, we need to do more on the farm. So I said, okay, that's fine. So we started looking at increasing our capacity on the farm in terms of irrigation, and looking at what crops we could do which would be of interest. So we were already doing Manch 2 peas for export, which we have been doing for the last, we've been exporting direct for the last 6 years. We started doing Manch 2 peas in 1996.
Wow.
But going through middlemen, and we took a break in 2007 when the things were unsettled in the country. And then we went back and we started working on that. So we now grow, grade, peg, and export direct to Europe, basically Europe, the UK, with in our own name, our own brand, direct to...
What's the brand name?
Our brand is Southern Fresh.
Okay.
Yes, it's Southern Fresh. So we increased focus on that. And then 2 years ago, he said, well, let's look at blueberries. So I said, yeah. He had done some work at his employers, where he had done an analysis of what it involved, feasibilities, and they saw opportunities. So we made some visits to farmers who were doing it, and we agreed to go in. So when we committed ourselves about this time last year, I thought he would be doing most of the running. I didn't realize it was going to be fall on me instead. So we paid a deposit for the plants, which are basically imported. We don't have any company which propagates blueberry plants in Africa at the moment. I think there's one which is being set up in South Africa to supply the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. At the moment, it's basically South America, in North America, and Europe. So we then had to start planning in terms of the inputs, and I'm talking about inputs which are basically all imported.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to get the orders, find out from people in the country who were involved, because there's no freely available information, and this now happens during the lockdown. No, the plant supplier would have been of a great assistance, but because of the lockdown, they couldn't travel, or they haven't been able to travel the last 6 months. So most of the things we had to do on our own. And
you're enjoying this?
I am enjoying it, Trevor. It's a challenge. My son, we are supposed to be, he's full-time employed somewhere. And he left it to me to ensure everything is done, paid for. I took a decision that I will pay for the initial investment using whatever savings I had, and thank God we were able to do that. We have all the inputs now on the farm. We are finalizing the setup, and we should be planting next month. So exciting.
Exciting, but I do get a sense that you after your 1 year break of doing nothing, you were asking yourself, what do I do? Do I start a consultancy? What do I do with my life? My life is at a crossroad, and your son says, you do this. Is that what happened? Or you were pretty clear?
Look, when he talked about it, I have a passion for farming, because I believe very strongly that for a country like Zim, with the climate, the soils we have, I think agriculture is the future of this country. So, and having been involved for 27 years in agriculture, I've learned quite a bit, and I'm looking at it as the low-hanging fruit really in this country, because agriculture is fast returns. You have some crops where you can start, like March 2, which I mentioned. You plant and you start harvesting after 10 weeks. So it's not, it doesn't take as much time as growing tobacco, for instance. I know, people believe that tobacco is the crop. I actually don't believe that. Tobacco takes a year. Most of the other horticultural vegetables are very quick gestation, quick returns. Yields are higher than tobacco. The price is higher than tobacco. So in terms of the country can actually change it around. And I don't know if you remember, probably 20 years ago, horticulture was big in this country. That's when we had more people were into flowers, which collapsed during the land redistribution. But we now have a move which is into vegetables, crops which people eat, and people always eat. And I look at it and I'm saying, well, there's no way there will be no market in terms of food. People are going to eat. The population of the world is going to continue growing more so in Africa. And Zimbabwe can take advantage of that.
But Zimbabwe can take advantage of it, Willard. What do you think needs to be done to allow Zimbabwe farmers such as yourself for us to get back to what we used to be called the breadbasket of Southern Africa? What do you think are the undergirding supportive structures and policies that need to be put in place by government to make sure people such as yourself are more productive?
I think what the government needs to do, I know they've introduced this Command Agriculture Pfumbudza scheme. I don't believe they actually is focused as they should be. And again, there are question marks about the transparency there. To me, government should create an enabling environment where they provide security through the banks. The financial institutions have got the role which is lending. They should be given that opportunity. If government is getting involved, they should be saying, well, go through the financial institutions. We will, as a government, in a way subsidize the inputs through the banking sector. Encourage young people, women, give them an opportunity to be able to raise capital through the banks at affordable rates. Because at the moment you go to the banks, the rates they are charging, including borrowing in US dollars, is just mind-boggling because you will never make money. So you say to yourself, why is government not seeing this opportunity? Because you can convert this country to become a massive exporter, generate a lot of foreign currency, never mind in the specialty crops. Even when you look at the basic, which is the basic food, maize, we could do much better. We should be aiming to increase the yield per hectare from where we are less than a ton per hectare to 3 tons a hectare, including the small-scale growers, and it can be done. With the input from government using their trained agri-techs officials, who, in my view, are being paid for doing nothing. And I think the last time I knew the numbers, they were employing over 4,000 people. And 4,000 people in roughly 60 districts in this country. Wow. I worked it out and said, well, go and say 2,000 of those people are permanently in the fields. And they are working with the people on the ground in the districts, go to the commercial areas, give supervision, because we're already paying for them. So it's not going to cost government anything extra, but it will change the way this country achieves results completely. That's my view, is it will change. But the biggest thing, Trevor, is we have to harness water more than what we have got. Because without water, in my view, there's no farming.
So you're building bed dams?
Yes,
is that what
building dams. Zimbabwe, from my old geography lessons, has got more big rivers scattered in all provinces, by the way, including in Region 5, than any other country except those who all sit on the equator. We have big rivers in every province. Those should be dammed. The water goes to the Indian Ocean every year, and the Indian Ocean doesn't need that water because it gets enough water anyway. Dam those rivers. The money can be found, borrow for purpose of infrastructure development, to be paid back from production by the farmers.
So you're critical of the command agriculture?
I'm not critical. I'm saying it could be done differently.
Differently, okay.
That's, you see, because the transparency of command agriculture is questionable.
Okay.
Yeah, because you've got some people who get inputs who don't use them, who don't need them, but because they are supposed to be big chefs, they get them. A guy who really needs them and is productive. And the guy, by the way, agri-techs have got officers who go around the country. And when you, we have been on command in some of the things, and they know our farm. They know what we produce. They go and look at what we are doing. And I remember the manager at the farm being told by one of them that really, if we were to have a few more farmers like you guys, it will change what we do in this country. So it's getting it to be operating transparently and really saying, well, if I'm giving a support to this farm, what are they going to do? And they must pay back, because this is should never be for free. It should always be saying you are paying back, because and that's when where the financial institutions come in, because they are structured to do that. They can collect, but then control the interest rates they will give, because government has to subsidize that. That's the only way. Get the setup, get water in the country. If you have water, my dream, which is more than almost 25 years ago, is I believe the country should have had piped water available at any available to villagers within 500 meters. And I'm talking about piped water.
And that's not.
And then it allows them to irrigate, even if each one of the small scale farmers could irrigate 1 acre, not a hectare, throughout the year, they'll be productive.
Would you? I mean, your son is involved with you, although you say he's left you to do the running around. Would you advise young people, young women, to get involved in farming? And
Absolutely.
what kind of advice would you give them?
Absolutely, they should get involved. And I know, I mean, my son is involved, but he has got quite a number of his colleagues, by the way, who left the country for their education, came back, and they are involved completely in farming. And I'm talking full-time, unlike him. But he has always said to me, I might not be, I'll probably be out of full-time employment within the next couple of years. I don't want to carry on, because I think there's more to be gained by doing things on our own. So women should be involved, clearly, because they are more, I regard them as more reliable in whatever they do, and they are going to be more honest in terms of even payments to banks. The youth should be involved. We have got too high in a level of unemployment, but they could be employed. Trevor, there is you can employ, I mean, the figures before the land redistribution, farming employed 350,000 people. I don't believe it's even anywhere near 100,000 now.
Absolutely.
So you've now lost 75% of those people are not employed. And what are they doing? Sitting, doing nothing, or going into gold panning. And the damage caused by that to this country, future generations will suffer. The country can do better than that.
Absolutely. Let's rewind a bit. You have had a successful career, and I want to take you back to your formative years. Where were you born? Where did you do your schooling? And what do you, when you look back, what are the experiences that shaped who Willard Zireva is?
Trevor, I was born and grew up in Harare. Went to school. I was a day scholar all my life until university. I'm from Fakose. And when we finished our standard 6 then, by the way, grade 7 for the youngsters, there was no secondary school in Fakose. So we had to go to Highfield or Harare, which is Mbari now. So the nearest school for us was Highfield. So I went to Highfield for 4 years of my secondary education, then moved to Harare because there was no Form 5 and 6 at Highfield. And so we had to use buses on a daily basis to move between Mfagose and Highfield, or Mfagose and Harare. We didn't see it as a problem, by the way. Some of our colleagues went to secondary school or to mission schools, which were all over. And it was a different lifestyle. We grew up in terms of maturity much quicker because you had to survive. Except that the transport system was much more efficient during our time and very affordable. And I'm talking about affordability, very affordable.
2.5 cents, 5 cents
2.5
for a ride.
cents for school scholars. So with 5 cents, I could go to Highfield and back every day. So it was affordable, and school was affordable as well. So but you had to be dedicated. There were always traps in your way where you could lose your direction, because you were not like in a formal mission school where you are controlled and you have reading times, study periods. As a day scholar, those don't exist. You went to school, went through your lessons. At the end of the lessons, if you were serious, you could read on your own, or you jump onto the bus and go back home or go to town to play. So you had to be focused. And my story was quite simple in the sense that, unfortunately for me, I lost my mother when I was 10. So I ended up living with my brother-in-law and my sister. They looked after me.
Okay.
So I knew that I had to achieve something in life. And there were, my sister specifically was a very strict disciplinarian.
So being raised by your brother-in-law gave you the drive that you had to do something.
I had to achieve something in life. And my brother-in-law was a very nice man and a simple man, but very, very nice. And I just grew an interest to say I must achieve something in life. And
did you have an idea what that was that you needed to
Trevor,
achieve?
very interesting. During those times, there were not too many options available, by the way, to blacks. The general trend was you were going to go into teaching, nursing, police. So when I was doing my O-levels, people started talking about going to training, because you could go then to teacher training, or join the police, or go, nursing, not so much for males, by the way, at that time. And I said, I don't like either of those two options, teacher or police. So I was fortunate, Trevor, in a way. We had this white lady who was our teacher, and I did accounting at Form 3 and 4. And I was good in accounting. And I remember sitting in class, and she called me to the front and said to me, sit here. So I sat there. And she said to me, look, do you want to be a professional accountant? Well, I didn't know what it was all about, by the way. So I said, well, what do you say about it? So she explained to me, and I said, well, I think I will be interested. So she said, okay, I'll do my best to see if I can get you a place to be employed. This is in doing my O-levels. She did a bit, but because of the system, they couldn't accommodate me.
Wow.
Yeah, very simple. So she set my mind.
And this is the racial system.
Yes, the racial system.
Yeah.
Where I know the whites would go and get diplomas being trained through Harare Polytechnic, by the way. And I couldn't be accommodated because you had to go through that through a firm of accountants who would then send you there. So she drew a blank. And I said, okay, interesting. I then set my mind up and she talked about being a chartered accountant. So she explained to me what a chartered accountant was, and I said, well, that's exciting.
Had you seen any role models who were chartered
Absolutely
accountants?
not. There were no role
So you were
models.
really flying blind.
It was
yeah.
flying in the blind, and she just explained to me, and I got excited.
Okay.
So after O levels, then I went for my A levels. But because I was not interested in going into the so-called available options, I actually chose to carry on with my education. And I think fortuitously for me, when I was doing my A levels, or in my 6th year, the University of Zimbabwe started offering an accounting degree. So I said, well, perfect. So I said, well, then after my A levels, I'll go to the university, do my accounting degree, and see how I can carry on with my ambition to become a chartered accountant. So, and I set my target and said it didn't matter how long it took, I would still want to end up being a chartered accountant. Even if it meant 10 years after graduating from university, I'll do that. So I ended up at the university as the second group, and there were only 6 blacks in my class. The rest were whites. And after finishing, I then applied to go and get trained by accounting firms. It took me 4 months to get a placement. The whites basically walked out of university in November after the exams, and they were employed in December. Some of my colleagues were more fortunate than me. They got employed in December. So I wasn't that fortunate, and I ended up going to interviews. And one of them, which I always remember, was when I was being interviewed, and at the end of the interview, the interviewers said to me, look, we think you would like to employ you, but we need to wait for the other candidates for their results to come out. This is A-level results, and I had a degree. And I looked at these guys and I said to them, I was quite, in fact, I was fearless, never bothered about worrying what will happen. I think I had a very clear mind that it didn't matter. And I said to the guys, if you are talking about employment, looking at A-level results, why don't you use my A-level results and ignore the degree and then employ me on that basis? That was, I asked that question, and all they could do, there were 3 of them, 3 white partners in the audit firm, and they just laughed and said, no, we'll get back to you. So,
but you then went on to become a pioneer in the accounting field. You then went on to actually fight for the changes, which then allowed more black people to come in. Talk to me about that.
Trevor, there were 2 blacks who passed the exam a year before us. Our year, there were 4 of us. And I think the following year, there were 6 or 8 of us. So we were really an unknown quantity. But I think having passed, you then had to get your certification. So we got the 2 who passed before us, and then our 4, then the next group. So almost we were sandwiched between these 2 groups, but there were only 2. One of them worked for the same firm as myself, and then on finishing the training, you then get registered. So we got registered, and the group behind us started getting registered. And 3 of us from the same firm ended up on the Institute of Chartered Accountants Council. And during that time, and this is now soon after independence, we were now looking at numbers. And the firms were trying to move away from getting more blacks in, and simply by saying they were not going to recognize the accounting degree at the University of Zimbabwe because the standards had deteriorated, which was ridiculous because at that time the University of Zimbabwe was way ahead of South African universities at undergraduate level.
So this was a way of keeping out
just
the blacks.
to keep blacks out, and you had to finish your 3-year degree, then go and do a diploma with UNISA.
To compete against...
In order to compete against a white guy
who
who has gone at A-level and is doing a part-time degree with South Africa. So we decided that we are not going to allow it to happen, and we set out to change that system. And we, at the meetings which were being held with at the council, we raised this issue and we said it cannot carry on, it's unfair, and it's discriminatory, simply. And the guys were trying to defend it naturally. So in the end, we had to then threaten them with going to government so that they could invoke, change the bylaws which govern the institute, and invoke and actually legislate to say you will take so many blacks. So, and they said, but how do we do it? Because we don't know where they are. And we said, it's simple. Adverts will go out. University of Zimbabwe will have that information. If you want to be enrolled as an articled clerk, you go and put your name with the institute. So we said, that's simple. That can't be difficult. And we said, well, we go to start with 60% blacks. And they were
this is amazing when you talk about this now. Looking back, crazy stuff.
Yeah, and they were reluctant. They thought, no, let's allow fairness, and people will be interviewed and be placed on their merits. So we said, no, there's no merit in this.
There's need to bring
they
more
need
black,
to bring in more blacks, and we said 60%, and it was accepted. And from there, blacks, the firms could only take people who were registered with the institute. And it allowed more blacks to get in, and in no time at all, there were more black students being taken in and qualifying than whites.
And then the profession
changed completely to where it's almost basically
predominantly black now.
Yes.
But it's amazing. We take these things for granted, Willard, but it's people like you who are in the forefront of fighting to bring about the change against the racists that we had.
Yeah. Trevor, it was necessary.
It was. It was. Then fast forward, you spent almost a big chunk of your life, 33 years, Delta and OK. And your life is actually split in two. Your time at OK is split into two. First of all, in 1983, as you are, then 1995 to 2001, if I'm wrong, where you are chief executive Delta Corporation in charge of retail, and then for 16 years, 2001 to 2017, as CEO for OK Zimbabwe. What an amazing life you've had, Willard. When you look back at those two parts, what sticks out for you in terms of your experiences and the learnings that you can share with our viewers?
Trevor, I joined Delta. In fact, at that time, Delta owned OK National Breweries, Chibuku, Zimbabwe Sun, and Coca-Cola or United Bottlers, basically in Megapack. So I was employed on a Delta contract, and they had a system where senior guys were employed on a Delta contract, even if you worked in one of the units.
All right.
So I was employed on a Delta contract without a position as such. But the group treasurer then, who I'd worked with, by the way, during my accounting training, decided that he wanted to bring people like me, and they told me categorically that I would want you in Delta. It doesn't matter where you go and work, but I want you in Delta. So it took a year for that to happen. So I joined OK 1st of April 1984. as the finance director. And I had clear set targets, agreed with the chairman of the company then, and my target was simply to get the controls in the company sorted out, reduce what is in retail one of their biggest problems, which is shrinkage or unexplained loss. Simply, that's what shrinkage is. And he told me it was bad in the company, and if I could reduce it to 1.5% of sales, he will look at me moving into a different role. So it was agreed before I even moved in, which I think is in a way fortunate. And at that time, I was doing a master's in business leadership, which you could only, there was no master's in this country, by the way, we could only do it through
UNISA.
Yeah, UNISA. So a group of us decided to go on that, and majority of that group, I think there were 6 of us from Zim, and 5 of us were accountants and 1 engineer. So I said, well, that the reason why I'm doing the master's in business is because I want to look at being involved in general management, not spending my time just focused on accounting. So, and the chairman agreed upfront that after 3 years or so,
Who was your chairman then? I mean, there was
Inos Chura was the executive chairman of Delta.
All right.
Then our chairman, who chaired Zimsan, Pelams, and OK, was Ron Stringfellow.
All right. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, Ron, and eventually ran Zimsan, and went and ran Southern Sun, by the way. So he was a good man. I mean, we can say whatever I want about race, but he, throughout my years working with him, he was absolutely fair. And he will call a spade a spade. If a white is being racial, he will say so. So that's the type of
Ron
person.
Stringfellow has a
Ron
good name.
Stringfellow,
He's got
yes.
a good name.
Yes.
And he eventually deployed you to OK
Okay,
Zimbabwe.
and said, right, I got there, basically all senior management except the HR was white. And the guys, apart from the HR guy, the whites, none of them had a degree, by the way. But they would have been promoted because of their
The
color.
white.
So you went in there, and I was doing my master's, and when I used to take time off, and the MD will say, but you don't need this master's. You are already overqualified. That's what they called it. Just because I got an undergraduate degree and a chartered accountant, overqualified. So I said, no. There's a good reason for doing it. Anyway, I joined, started working, had issues there, obviously, because of the racial situation. But because of the support of the chairman, I was able, effectively told me I wasn't going to leave the company because there was a stage where I wanted to leave. But he said, no, you're not leaving. We need you there. So Trevor, to just move 3 years later, he moved or influenced me to be appointed a general manager. Position was created for me. There was no, it was a new position, so that I could, and then I looked after the operations, marketing, and buying
Of OK.
Of OK, and the MD looked after personnel, HR, and finance. So that I get exposure to the operations. And then 3 years after that, it happens to be 3 years or so, about there, 1990, I was appointed the MD of the company. Challenging times, the whites were still there at senior level. And I had rumors of guys saying, well, let's see what happens. This company is going to fail because a black person is taken over. So it galvanized me. I honestly said, I need to prove a point. I need to show that blacks can achieve. I mean, we had instances of blacks who had been appointed early at independence who actually failed. But so I said, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen. And I was so clear in terms of how we operated, and I spoke to the guys, and I said, my role here is to assist you to achieve your goals. I'm talking about now the
management.
departmental head. It wasn't me who was going to do it, they had to do it. And it changed the way people looked at things. And I think I always had an open door policy. Nobody was restricted from coming into my office unless I was in a meeting. So my door was always open. And I'm talking about people from the low level. So mine was, if people have got important things, they'll come and see me. If they are not important, I do not believe that a person will waste their time to come and see me. So I allowed that to happen. And many people got absolutely surprised. Because, and I would say, phone me if you don't want to come and see me personally. And if you have issues, you can talk to me.
So that was your management style?
That was my management style. Absolutely open door policy, prepared to listen to all people views, and I will still help the people to understand if things were being done which they were not clear about. And we started in 1990 the first retail graduate training program.
I see.
And we brought in 20 graduates from the University of Zimbabwe, and we trained these guys. And eventually, OK became the training ground for retail in this country. Basically, all the wholesalers, retailers, the majority of them ended up employing OK trained graduates.
Fascinating.
So
talk to me now. I mean, for me, one of the most important marketing platforms when I look around the country is the OK Grand Challenge. Where did the thinking around the OK Grand Challenge come from? And what explains the success of it as a brand building tool, a brand building platform? Talk to me about the OK Grand Challenge.
Trevor, OK was always into promotions, by the way. And the reason why the promotions were fitted in our calendar was simply we realized that there was a dip in sales from April to July. And this applies across all consumer businesses, by the way,
So
including
seasonal.
Delta.
It's seasonal.
Yeah, and seasonal beverages lost money in Delta during those months, by the way. So when in 1987, we had launched a promotion which was, I think, called Super Swapper, something like that. And our competitors tried to run it down, really firing pot shots at this promotion. And we said, but we had another promotion, which was a promotional agenda which we had on the sidelines. So we started saying, okay, next time we're going to have a different promotion. But then 87 was a very difficult year, I think, in this country. That's when we started suffering shortages of foreign currency. So to get foreign currency, to import anything, you had to go through the Ministry of Industry. And you got allocations.
Yes, that time.
And there were difficulties. I mean, the first years of independence were kind of currency in this country. So in 87, we started getting shortages. And we sat as a management team and said, we've got to do something which will bring the three groups and bring excitement in the three groups, which was the customer, the supplier, and ourselves. And they said, we must come up with a promotion which will involve the three. And that's the concept and the thinking. And I remember one of our major suppliers actually saying to me, you guys, we don't know where you are coming from. This country is going one way down. And we said, well, but we've got to keep going if we've got business. Shareholders have entrusted us with these businesses. So we've got to get them to run, and we want to excite the market. And in the process, increase business. So this is 1987. So that's the start of the
Genesis of
the OK
Challenge.
Grand Challenge, and took it to our advertising agents, and we said, this is the thinking. Can we come up with with a promotion which will culminate in something which is exciting? And that's the rest day. The options were there. Do we end up with a soccer, a game, or something like a racing? Because we then said racing is popular and professionally run. So we chose racing ahead of soccer because of the confusion in soccer, basically. That, being honest about it. So, and we launched it in 1988. And at that time, it had a 3-year life cycle.
Wow.
That was the plan. It was going to last 3 years, and we're going to end up with a new promotion after 3 years. So we signed a 3-year agreement with the Majority TEF Club, and a competition were rattled when we launched the Grand Challenge. Absolutely rattled. And they came in with some snide suggestions, and
competition is always good.
Yeah, comical horses,
Yeah.
and to attack the horse race. And some of the people who were involved in that were my friends, by the way. And I then ended up phoning our biggest competitor then, when they actually went beyond being professional.
Wow.
And I phoned him and I said, look, what they put in the paper is unacceptable, and we can actually sue you.
Wow. Did it get to that?
Correct. And I phoned the chairman and Inos Jura before doing it. And I said, you might get a call from this guy's chairman after my discussion with him, because I'm not going to be polite. So I told him how I felt, and he actually accepted.
That they had overstepped.
They had overstepped the mark, and the Advertising Standards Association
Wow.
could not do anything. We said, but you can, because this is a direct attack.
And
so it changed.
Fast forward now, you started, you thought it would last 3 years.
3 years was the timeline.
2020,
It's
OK
still
Grand
there.
Challenge is still there.
It's still
what
there.
explains the success?
Trevor, when
Willard?
we started, it became so popular that when we were planning to end it, this is now 88, 89, in 90 was supposed to be the last one. When we were supposed to end it, we sat down and reviewed it. And we actually concluded that it would be totally unacceptable to our partners, which was the customer and our suppliers, to end this promotion. So we said there will be an uproar. It had become an expected part of the calendar for customers and suppliers. So we said, let's run it for another 3 years. It was always a 3-year cycle. And then we said, no, but it's become so powerful, we have to register the brand. So we registered Grand Challenge as a brand. Look, the rest
Is history. But in your view, Willard, let me press you there. What do you think explains the success? You've got the customer, you've got the supplier, and you as a retailer. What was the magic there?
The three parties involved all win, Trevor, in this. The Grand Challenge promotion, when you talk about the prices, those prices are unbeatable. The customer wins not only in terms of pricing, but they win in terms of the prizes. We introduced the cars, started I think as one Nissan Sunny, and grew to end up with the last time we had the highest was 45 cars. So we were empowering the ordinary person. We were saying the person who is going to win, and the majority of the customers, by the way, were people from the high density areas.
Yeah.
And that's what we preferred, because those were our loyal customers. We said it must change their lives. And it certainly changed lives. And as a result, it has carried on and making an impact on people's lives for the last 32 years.
For me, it
Trevor.
stands out as a
I
classic.
don't even know how the guys are going to stop it if they can, because it's
unstoppable.
It's just such a part of the culture now, and people expect the Grand Challenge. I mean, this year was a disaster because of the lockdown, so you couldn't hold the Grand Challenge, and we ended up breaking all attendance records at Borodale Racecourse. Completely, all of them were broken.
Your time at OK also was, you talk about the lost decade, and part of that lost decade resulted in you and other CEOs being arrested and put in jail for breaching what we called price controls. Talk to me briefly about that lost decade and the lessons that you as CEO of OK learned from spending time in jail.
Trevor, the lost decade, I think, runs from just early 2000 when the chaotic land redistribution started. And in the process, our currency basically collapsed and lost value completely. And people who were involved in deals which were not transparent achieved more than those who were doing an honest day's job. It ended up skewing everything to a level where working became a non-rewarding vocation. And we had to go through that, and pricing became difficult because exchange rates were changing on a daily basis. People say prices will change while you are buying in the store. It's an exaggeration. I think most of the big operators have no capacity to do that, because all pricing, for instance, in any of the big operators is set in one place, which is the procurement department. And they can only do that once a day. And retail prices are driven by supplier prices. It's a greatly misunderstood thing where people think the retailers just change prices. It's impossible, because when you look at a retailer like a supermarket, they've got 10,000 line items, 6,000 in some of the smaller stores, and you can't change those prices.
Just like that.
Just like that. It's impossible. So it has to be done from a central point of so we had to try and survive during that time. And I can tell you it was difficult. OK had just been floated on the stock exchange in October 2001. That's when I came back from Delta to head the company as the CEO. And it became so difficult 6 years down the road. That's when government intervened in June 2007 and started trying to dictate prices. Then during that month, government actually decreed that all prices were going to be reduced by 50%. So for a retailer, you had already bought and committed to paying for the product at 100%, and you now had to reduce the price by 50%. You were going straight into a loss situation anyway. We did not, as OK, refuse to do that. What we did was to say to the government officials, give us an official document which stipulates what the prices should be. Otherwise, there will be mayhem in the system. And I remember going to see Vice President, then Maimujuru, with two colleagues, and saying to Maimujuru, she was acting president at that time, we will have major problems in this country if prices are going to be dictated by the media, where the Herald says prices must come down. please introduce the normal statutory instruments so that there is order. And she understood it and said, yeah. And so a meeting was called, and we had to, involving the three of us and Jock, by the way. And we tried to explain, and some of the normal sane guys there in Jock understood it. There were always some
That's
outliers.
the Joint Operations Committee.
Command.
Command.
Yes,
With
headed
military
by the
intelligence.
military.
And,
military intelligence, Air Force. Prisons were not part of Jock then. And the army, the police. So
they are now deciding prices, retail
they are now
prices.
deciding on what you should be doing. So I explained to them my worry, and some of them understood it completely. And I remember, the current commander of the defense forces was sitting there, and at the end of the convoy where he had his colleagues saying this and that and so on, he said, gentlemen, let's just, I will say something before we depart. These guys are right. What they are saying will prevent chaos in this country. And we should actually ask the Ministry of Industry to institute what they are suggesting. Very clear, sober. Anyway, we proceeded with, then they published statutory instruments. But one of them was, the blanket one was reduced prices by 50%. So, you have whatever number of items in the stores, and they've got to reduce those prices. There's no way. You had to write a new program in the computer, by the way. And I remember I went out of the country on a trip, end of June, came back over the weekend of the first weekend of July. On the Monday, went to work, and around 11 a.m., 7 people came in from across the security sector, and they were looking for Willard Zireva, who they didn't know, most of them anyway. So, and they blockaded the OK head office. Amazing.
Looking for you.
Looking for me. But I was sitting in my office. So I went down to meet them in the boardroom, because I said to my secretary, you will not allow them to come to my office. We'll meet in the boardroom.
Yeah.
So, and as I walked down, some of them were already in the boardroom. And I greeted them. They didn't even know who I was. So I said, gentlemen, I believe you are looking for Willard Zireva. This is me. So we sat down. Said, we want to look at what you guys are doing because they are not complying and so on. I said, okay, that's fine. But from what I know, we are complying. So let's go to our procurement department. So we went to the procurement department. We showed them what it meant. And there was one buyer who was sitting there with a book where you couldn't see him. But these were all items which had to be changed in price. Wow. So they went through, discussed, and the guy who was in charge actually got to understand it.
But still, you were arrested.
Yeah, he understood it, and they said, okay, we'll come tomorrow, which was the following day. So they came back. We went through, and we said, prices are changing in the stores right now as we speak. So he said, let's go and look at them. So we went round, we went to Mbare, Avondale, 5 Avenue. And he came back to head office at about 6:30 p.m. And they said to his colleagues, guys, OK is following instructions. Can we give these guys our numbers in case there's anybody who tries to question what they are doing? And I'm going to give my report tomorrow. There was a committee which was set up for doing that. And we left. I had to go to my office to try and catch up for the day. And I left at about 8:30. I remember that very vividly. Got to my house at 5 minutes to 9 p.m. So I opened the gate, went in, or the garage gate, my wife opened it for me, so I get in. Before I could even get to inside the house, the gate bell rang. So my wife answered it, and there was an irate police officer shouting at the top of his voice for her to open the gate. So she basically froze. And she didn't open. So I went inside and I tried to phone these guys who had been working with, and the senior guy, and his phone was continuously busy. To try to say to him, look, this is what is happening. Who are these guys? Anyway, eventually these guys were banging on the gate.
Wow.
So I said to my wife, open it. And they opened. And these were not uniformed police officers, by the way. And there were 4 of them driving a BMW. Civilian numbers, everything. So they didn't want to come into the house, by the way. And they asked for me to go out. So I said, no, okay, let me change. So I went into a tracksuit. And I went into their car. So I'm sandwiched in between at the back. And they took me to Marlborough police station and left me there. And they said to the guys at Marlborough, keep him, you can lock him up. So, and I'm saying, but what have I done? So after a few minutes, this guy says, okay, you've got too much clothing. So you've got to...
You're spending the night.
For doing what?
Yeah.
So anyway...
How long were you in there?
No, I was in there only one night.
One night.
I think I was fortunate because these guys had no justification at all. So I phoned my lawyer, and he said, okay, that's fine. He came, visited us that night with my wife. And then, but I'd been locked up already, and they had to take me out of the cells. And that's a different experience, by the way, Trevor. You go in there, and this is in pitch darkness. First thing is you don't know who is in there. You don't know the size of the room. So as I walked in, and the policeman bolted the door, I said to myself, Willard, you have to survive. And this was interesting, a lesson which we had been imparted on us by a colleague who said to us, and we were fishing in Caribbean, I remember that very vividly. He said to us, gentlemen, any one of you can be a candidate of the state because of your positions. Just remember that, prepare for it. And I remembered that, and I said, okay, so I'm going to survive. So I started talking, because I didn't want to stamp on other people.
How many were you? How many were you?
I didn't know when I walked in. It's dark. Trevor. So I started, and the guy, I asked the question, gentlemen, I'm here to join you. Where can I find somewhere to lie down? And the one guy responded and said, just walk straight. And when you get to the end of the building, turn left. Now, you don't know where the building is, so I was walking with my hand like that. So I go to the end, I turn left. So this is 10th of July, 2007. Cold. So, and I said, well, gentlemen, I need a blanket. It's too cold. So the guy who was in charge, who I found out was in charge, was a pastor, but in jail. So he said to his colleague who was nearest me, please, can you give him...
So he's a fellow prisoner.
He's a fellow prisoner. But he had been detained as well for whatever. He had committed something wrong anyway. So eventually he said to the other guy, give him some blankets. So he gave me some blankets. And I lay on that bare floor, angry. And I couldn't sleep. The following morning, we are taken out for a parade, and now I discovered, in fact,
Sorry,
I had
I'm
asked...
laughing because it's a bit strange and funny.
I was tired, I was angry, but I had been talking to this guy. It was only one guy talking, by the way. So I had to ask him, how many are we? So he said, we were 5 before you, now we are 6. So anyway, eventually, the following morning, I discovered, when we were on parade, that he was the leader of those people in cells. And when you get into cells, you create status. So eventually I got called to the police charge office because my lawyer was now there. So I left these other 5 guys. And when they saw the officer commanding, the officer in charge of the Marlborough police station, and he was furious because he said, "Who are you?" So he said, "Well, I was brought here." And he was now trying to penalize his officers. So I had to intervene, and I said, "Officer, can I speak, please?" So I said to him, "These guys, it's not their fault.
I was brought here.
I was brought here and they tried to phone you, and your phone was engaged. I could hear, I could see your officer trying to, but you couldn't get through."
When you reflected that now, I mean, this was one of the most chaotic times of our lives.
Yeah,
The land, the chaotic land acquisition, and then the price control.
The price control.
You spend a night for allegedly breaching the price control. What goes through your mind?
I think it's what goes through my mind, Trevor, is I think a system which really has no respect for human rights. You punish your citizens for no reason because I done nothing wrong. And I wasn't the only one. There were many who were arrested. There were many branch managers from OK who were arrested. When we got to the investigations department in Robson Manyika, I found so many of the guys there, and I felt sorry for them. But I was clear in my mind that this is a passing phase. It's unnecessary for this country, and we will survive. So, and the police officers who had picked me up, I didn't recognize them, but they recognized me because they came there. And two of them came and started talking to me, and they said, "Who are you?" So they told me who they were, and I was angry with them. And they said to me, "Look, Mdara, we are under instructions."
Wow.
Simple.
That's what they always say.
So in the end, Trevor, it was a lesson where you say, but as a country, it's unnecessary. We don't need that. Even all the evidence which came through was completely complying. But there was another.
I suppose at that time you were chairman of the Retailers Association.
I was the chairman of Retailers.
So they were sending a message to
and I'd been pre-warned, Trevor, by the way, by one of the guy who was then chairman of the pricing commission, the first one, who was fired after a few weeks. And he spoke, called a meeting, spoke about it, and said, we are going to show that we've got teeth, and we'll go for the big fish. I was sitting there with him talking like that. And he happened to be one of our suppliers, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I said, well, I didn't understand what he was talking about. But effectively, they wanted me as an example because they wanted the retailers to comply. But they didn't need to do it because some of us were complying.
But they have the power, they can still do
correct.
it. A slightly controversial question around retailers and the way they treat small producers. You take goods and you take 45 days, 60 days to pay. Meanwhile, the little retailer is battling to make ends meet. What's your response to that?
Trevor, it's not, I don't think it's an industry norm. I'm quite happy to sit here and say during my time, we managed to set up and get small operators to grow. And we generally complied with the payment terms. You have odd situations where you probably payment has not been made because the documentation is not adequate. That happens as well.
Okay.
Where the system says, well, we can't pick your document in our creditors. So the accounts people cannot pay. So if their document has not been processed by a branch, which should never happen, but it happens, it's human, they will not be paid because they've got to have evidence that this company is delivered and the branch is confirmed and it has gone through the process.
Okay.
So it's picked in head office because payments are all done in one place, which is head office. So it's we tried our best to support small guys because we never, or I never was a proponent of accepting that there should be monopolies or two dominant companies. And we have examples of small guys who became big through the support of OK. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not an industry.
No, it's not.
Let me now move to books. You have a number of books that you love reading, and of course you are big on the Harvard review, but I want you to recommend a couple of books that you have read. Willard, I know you have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Why are you recommending that book and the other two that you're recommending?
Trevor, it's a book which gives a person a life survival lessons. It's a very simple book and very small. And any one of the youngsters really needs to read that because it gives you an idea of what you should be doing in business. And you're talking about a guy who has got effectively two fathers, although he should be one, but he has got two. And one is the rich one and the other one is the poor one. So it's illustrating that in life, you've got to have the right focus and you'll be able to move forward. And you go and look at it and you say, well, this is actually quite interesting. And I found it such a nice read because it's not a bulky book, but it's very, very good. And it has been a massive seller. And the other one,
In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters.
Those books were so good for us during our time because we were going into management and we needed to change. But you had to read, and he has written a series of books which were all moving with the times, but they're all pertinent and relevant. And you say to yourself, what is the lesson? The lesson is to say, as a person, you've got to establish a position where you have something which puts you in a position of strength. You must behave in a way where you are respected and you respect other people. It's actually simple lessons. There's nothing really where people talk about some of these books and they think there's something quite spectacular and unusual, but they're actually simple, very simple. They are life lessons. Yes.
Your third book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I must confess that for me that book was life changing too. It looks like it did the same thing with you.
It did, Trevor. That's an amazing book.
Yeah.
And it does not become redundant, by the way, because it's simply talking about across business and life, family. So it gets you back to sit and say, well, there should be no a break between what you do as a person, family and business.
Work.
They shouldn't be.
Seamless.
It's seamless, and they should be looking at it from a point of view where you recognize people's strengths. We're all different. You are going to be able to, but don't try and change a person. It's, to me, the biggest lesson in that book. Try and work on their strengths and let them reinforce them themselves, because that's what life is all about. Where we pick on weaknesses, you're actually going to destroy a person who could be a very good person.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Willard, thank you very much. This is the book that I'm recommending to people like you who are in retirement or starting a new life, as it were, creating the good life, applying Aristotle's wisdom of finding meaning and happiness, because where you are right now is from success to significance, because you've achieved quite a lot. Willard, we're so grateful that you created time to come and join us in conversation. You're 33 years at OK, head of the Retail Association, chairing Old Mutual Life and other companies is a life that's full of a lot of good examples. So we're grateful for you coming to share your insights with us. Allow me, Willard, to turn to our viewers at home, in the diaspora, all over the continent, who are followers of In Conversation with Trevor, to thank you for watching this show, which is a weekly show. And to ensure that you don't miss out on any of these qualitative conversations, we invite you to click on this red button to subscribe. And also, we now are producing podcasts of the show. Scroll down on our YouTube channel, you'll find the link that will take you to the podcast. So until next time, thank you for watching, and cheers to you all.